I'm really happy to introduce this session. Every year we try at ISAN to select an honorary scholar who during their career has contributed to the study of narrative and autoethnography. And it's my honor this year to announce that this year's selection is Patricia Geist-Martin. Patricia is a retired communications scholar from San Diego State University. She has explored how people make sense of their experiences, especially in contexts such as work, caregiving, and health, through stories that connect personal life to cultural expectations and institutional structures. Patricia has contributed to autoethnography for decades, really from the beginning, where we started, with her research, teaching, and editorial work. She has mentored many students and supported qualitative and autoethnographic work in every way, especially here at ISAN and IANI. She is always a lively presence at conferences, whether they're online or in person. And really, I think we should be giving her an award for the most energetic backup dancer at our in-person karaoke sessions. By the way, don't ever try to keep up with Patricia. You just won't be able to. But for now, this is the honorary recognition that we have for you, so we hope that it suffices. And maybe we can figure out in the future a way to have karaoke and dancing online.
Yeah, that would be
I'm sure
great.
we can figure that out. So I want to turn the session now over to Patricia and her conversational partner, who is a former student, Sarah Parsloe, who is currently an associate professor at Rollins College. So take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn, for inviting me to do this session with Patricia. I love that framing of you can't keep up with Patricia because I met Patricia as a young whippersnapper grad student. She was my professor for my very first class, which happened to be ethnography at San Diego State, way back in 2012, I think it was. And of course, I couldn't keep up with her then. I went to the Western States Communication Association conference and I was going to skip the sock hop. I was like, I'm too tired. I'm like 24. I need to go to bed. And she texted me like, get your butt down to the sock hop. So she'd always been that kind of cheerleader and just a vibrant person. And so when I took her class in ethnography, I fell in love with storytelling and with the idea that this could be scholarship, that we can describe human experiences in these really rich and evocative ways. And we could be like just interesting as scholars. And she remained a part of my professional life and my personal life as a teacher, as a mentor, but also as a friend. She went to my wedding as my academic mom. And then in 2020, we collaborated on a book called Falling in Love with the Process, a stroke survivor's story. And we chronicled how a stroke survivor named Bill, who became our close friend as well, how his earlier life experiences and his friendships and his habits contribute to his resilience after a devastating stroke. And so that's some of our work together, but we've been on a long journey together as friends and collaborators. So I wanted to start this panel by chatting with Patricia a little bit about her career. And Patricia, I wanted to start with a kind of broader question. My question here is just in general, can you tell us, how did you come to embrace narrative and autoethnography as a central part of your career? So in other words, like, why are you so passionate about storytelling as scholarship?
Well, thank you for that question and thank you for this honor, Carolyn and Ayani. It means the world to me to be featured today. I happened to run into Kurt Lindemann last night, and he isn't registered for the conference, but he saw that I had this scholar spotlight and congratulated me. And I'm like, I didn't know other people knew. So that was kind of a cool thing. So thank you very much. I really appreciate this moment. It's interesting. I was thinking about when Sarah and I were trying to decide exactly how we wanted to do this. We kind of came up with a set of questions, and I didn't really plan anything, but it's been sort of rolling around in my head, and it's kind of interesting because I was as an undergrad at the University of Iowa, I was a literature and writing major. And I kept getting these comments from my professors, who were all professors in the writer's workshop, so very talented, but they would say things that about the way that I wrote uh, about characters in novels, that I seemed to have a really good grasp of relationships and what was happening to the characters. And so when I started thinking about what Sarah and I discussed, I thought, wow, this kind of started really young for me in terms of being writer, interested in characters, interested in scenes and relationships. And I went on for my master's in performance of literature and also interpersonal. And again, it was about bringing the stories and the scenes and the context alive. So it really happened to be a really great foundation. But I think the real turning point for me was my PhD, where both Linda Putnam and Phil Tompkins were very much into qualitative research. And, we're writing in that format. And it was fascinating to me. And then the real big turning point is my last year in the PhD program. Nick Trujillo came as a professor, and I took his ethnography class. And that was life-changing for me. And I knew from then on that that's where I belonged. And I'll tell you what, that's where I found my people. I found my people as we, kept struggling and made the ethnography division of NCA, of ICA. I mean, I don't think ICA has one, but NCA does. And I just found myself coming alive. It's like everything that I had learned sort of came to this place where you really value people's stories and you really want to understand what context they came from. And the irony was, I started out as kind of a quantitative person at Purdue. And then these, paper and pencil, surveys, but people were writing in the margins. But you didn't ask me about this, and you didn't ask me about that. And so I learned through my quantitative experience that people were just dying to tell the bigger story that could never be captured in a survey. So, once I really found my tribe in ethnography, it was, a real easy move to autoethnography, because as anyone who teaches ethnography knows, you always have students in the class that say, can't I just tell my story? Can't I just connect with what's going on, how I can theorize and understand my story? And every semester that I taught ethnography, I usually, out of 12 to 15 people, I'd have at least 4 that wanted to tell their story. And then I started to dive into ethnography, and I've never looked back. I don't know if there's more to that story, but that's a good start.
Yeah, I think it's fun to think about how taking a class in ethnography from Nick Trujillo was your turning point, and then you created that turning point for your students, like me and so many other people like me who came through your classroom. And maybe we hadn't planned on this question, but I'm wondering if, like, do you remember a moment in that class? And if you don't, I can talk about a moment from your class. But do you remember a moment that something that Nick Trujillo said or did in the class was like a real turning point moment for you, an aha moment?
Yeah, overall, I'll start with the fact that Nick was all about creating a team out of the class. So we were all going into the hospital.
Mm.
And the hospital was, somebody was shadowing the chaplain, someone was shadowing a doc, someone was shadowing a nurse, someone was shadowing, I happened to shadow the patient advocates. And kind of irony now that I think about it, because the patient advocate is all about, what's the doc's story? What's the
Mhm.
nurse's story? What is the family story? What is the patient's story? You have to, in order to become a patient advocate, you really had to be familiar with all these people's stories and where they were coming from. So I think for me, it was a fascinating experience and really kind of led me to how I taught ethnography, was that we would come to class with our field notes from our different perspectives. And it would be these aha moments every single class where someone would say, well, the administrator said this, but the doc said this. Wait a minute. These are not matching up. What's going on here? So every single week, we'd find these disconnects, but also overlap, some resonance. But it took that sort of team approach where we were all studying one context together, where we saw the richness and complexity and layers of ethnography. And so I would say that would be that class and how he taught it, what really made the difference.
Yeah, and I could see that in the way that you taught our class. And I was your one of your advisees for my thesis, and you created TAG, which is the thesis advising group. So we were a tag team. We were working together to get through our projects and to think together. And one thing I remember from your class, you had us write a shadow story.
Yeah.
Do you remember doing that? Maybe if you could describe like that practice, that teaching practice.
Yeah. One of the, I'll get back to this later, but that idea of the shadow and the shadow work is something that I read a lot about in certain articles. It's also something that Amira de la Garza really promoted in her work as well. And now I'll talk about this later, but I'm finalizing a book on leadership, particularly for women. And one of the chapters of the book is Befriend Your Shadow. Because instead of running from what you're uncomfortable with, what kind of nags at you in the ethnographic work, in the autoethnographic work, and in this leadership book, we really want people to take a look at what that shadow is and why it's following us and why it always continues to be something that is that nagging thing that you just can't let go of. And looking at it, befriending it, make part of what you're trying to understand, I think really helps you to become a better writer. It helps you to get closer to what is at issue, what is at the heart of what you're trying to understand in your autoethnographic project. So yeah, I think it's kind of been a big thing for me for a long, long time. Even in my own personal life too. I don't want to go into that though.
I won't ask you about that. Hello, have some therapy
For
here.
another scholar spotlight.
Yeah. But that maybe it's related to thinking about, is there like a particular project? I mean, you've done so much. It's like what, over 65 books and but chapters and articles. It's like so much. But can you think about a project that was particularly meaningful to you? Like what about it was so fulfilling in
Well,
completing it?
every single thing that I write, I mean, one of the things I really am very proud of is if anyone took a look at my resume, it would be a slam dunk in terms of collaborations with students. And that it just like, if I had to say, what is my legacy? I would say that's my biggest legacy, is mentoring students. And it just is so valuable. I'm still doing it. I mean, I have students at San Diego State. I've been retired for almost 4 years now. And they're still sending me students who want to study autoethnography because it's not being taught. No one else is teaching it. So I'm meeting with students on the regular. Every couple of weeks, there's someone I'm Zooming with or doing something with. In fact, I should tell everybody at IANI that I had wonderful encounters with so many people, but I had 2 encounters with PhD students, one who's in England and one's at the University of Kansas. And I've met with both of them and have been sharing and mentoring them. And it's exciting to me, but it's kind of interesting, I think, when you start to look back at your career, how you worked through to the place that you are now. Mm-hmm. And when I was in PhD program, I ended up doing my dissertation on the hospital and studying, because of Nick's class, studying the ways in which different perspectives clashed or coincided. And that was absolutely fascinating to me. But it also was a shadow work now that I think of it. I spent a lot of time in the hospital from age 8 all the way till 17 when my mom died, in and out of the hospital with her. My dad died when I was 33, in and out of the hospital with him. And I think I've been afraid of the hospital. It's been a shadow for me because of those losses. And then I think many of you know I've had 7 miscarriages. So in and out of the hospital for the DNCs and what goes along with losing a baby to miscarriage. But anyway, I think that shadow work was sort of part of what I did in my very first book. I collaborated with Monica Hardesty, a medical sociologist, and then I really wanted to study gender in my PhD, but it was no. I was told by several people that you shouldn't really do that because then you'll be labeled as this particular person. That could really constrain career. Well, my second book is Women's Words, Women's Wisdom. Well,
Take that.
I'm claiming that, man. You didn't let me do what I wanted to do, but I collaborated with Linda Perry and we edited a beautiful book I love on women's words, women's wisdom. And again, the stories that women told that were often silenced. Women who were recovered alcoholics, women who lost children, to miscarriage, my chapter, but women who lost custody of their children, sort of silenced stories. So my story was silenced, what I really wanted to do. And so this was, for me, kind of a turning point moment to bring that out. And I think that's why I'm so excited about this new book that I'm writing the last chapter with my co-author, who was one of my mentees and went off for her PhD. And right now it's called Rewilding Leadership, the Wisdom of the Feminine. And we've interviewed almost 100 women, and they're telling their stories about how they were, really pressured and, really limited, silenced, voiceless by the masculine logical models of leadership. And so their stories are about the challenges they faced and what they did to use their own feminine wisdom to become the leaders, because it's all women who are leading in some capacity. So, it's kind of interesting. I never really thought about it that way, Sarah, but I really did, reach into that shadow and have it be a part of it. But I guess to kind of end your question, I would say, and, I don't want to get tears in my eyes, but working with you.
Oh, no.
Hi.
We're just gonna have a cry fest in front of these poor people.
I know it could happen. All of a sudden we forget they're even here and we do our thing. So yeah, that was a highlight. We worked really hard on that book, interviewed so many people. Sarah came to San Diego after she had moved away. I went to Florida after she moved away, and we really collaborated and created what I feel is a phenomenal book. So thank you for that, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, well, you're talking a lot about the role of mentorship and collaboration, which I think is something that defines like who you are as a person. You are so good at listening to people's stories, first of all, and getting people to tell stories that are their shadow stories that they haven't felt safe to tell other people, and start to claim some of those shadow experiences. And that's so, it's just such a wonderful skill that you have. But I love that, the work that we do together is also an opportunity for us to reconnect. So, I got to work with Patricia as a master's student, but then I went 4 years and she was still there in the background. Every time I had, like imposter syndrome, I'm like, Patricia, oh my gosh. And then I graduate and you still have imposter syndrome. And then we have Patricia is always like listening for stories and thinking about how to tell them. And she ran across this man named Bill as he was wandering around. He was at this duck pond where he would go and feed the ducks, and just struck up a conversation with him. And he talked about this massive stroke that he had and how this process of feeding the ducks helped him to recover because he had someone who needed him. And Patricia's like brain just lit up, right? She has this kind of like ding, ding, ding. That's an interesting story. And she like filed it away. And then she saved it for me. She thought, who else would resonate with this story? And can we co-tell it together? And I think that's something that makes Patricia so wonderful is she's always also thinking about how can we tell stories collaboratively with other people and build relationships in the process. So Bill, bless Bill. Bill, he just turned 90 years old. He had a stroke. What is he like? He was in his
69. I think he was
yeah.
69 when he had a stroke. Yeah.
He's still going strong. And after the book, Patricia still goes and gets coffee and breakfast with Bill, and they send me pictures. So for her, the work is about scholarship, but it's also about relationships. And I think that's something that makes her such a wonderful person to know, both as a scholar and as a human being. So yeah, that's just my plug for Patricia.
Thank you. I'll take it. I'll
Yeah.
take it.
I was thinking I kind of floated this question out to you because I'm just interested. Like when you think about a creative risk that you've taken, and you've had such a rich career, but also a career we've just heard like don't talk about gender, don't do particular things, perform your scholarly career in a particular way. But you've taken a lot of creative risks across your work. Can you think of an example of one, something you experimented with that was interesting to you?
Well, I don't know if this was a creative risk, but it was a risk. When I was working on the edited book with Linda Perry about women's words, women's wisdom, I had experienced I had experienced 3 miscarriages, and the prospect of having a baby was looking dim, and this was over the course of a couple of years. And I made the decision. And again, I guess this is, gosh, I never thought about it this way, but it's me confronting that shadow. And I collaborated with Julie Gray, one of my grad students, to interview women who had experienced miscarriage and to write their stories when I was pregnant for the 4th time and not knowing for sure if I was going to have another. And that 4th pregnancy actually turned out to be McKenna. But I didn't know that then. And I had had the 3 miscarriages before. So to go into the interviews, pregnant with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear. I think that was a creative risk for me to actually conduct and write up that story. But luckily, I got to write an ending to that story that was very powerful because it was my little McKenna May, who's actually, if I'm a little off, she's this very moment in surgery for us, a burst appendix. It just happened this morning. So I'm thinking good thoughts, and I know you all will too. But yeah, that was, I think, a kind of a creative risk to write something in the middle of a pregnancy where I'd lost 3 before. So it turned out really beautifully, but it was not easy at that moment. But I think it made a difference in terms of how we that piece and how amazing it was to have Julie, my grad student, as a collaborator, knowing and really being able to talk with her about the fear I was experiencing. So I would say that was one of my big creative risks, I'd say.
I think that's like a characteristic about you that I'm seeing in my thematic analysis, which I'm conducting right now about your career. You have an instinct where most people, when something is painful in their life, they like box it up and shove it away. And you might do that also. But I think oftentimes you go, what is painful? Let me like poke at it. Let me explore it. Let me take this creative risk, this choice to confront it, even when I'm having these really kind of vulnerable moments myself. Like maybe you don't have an answer for this, but like, what do you think appeals to you about that process of kind of poking at the pain and exploring it?
I think I had the experience of pushing away the pain of losing my mom at 17.
Mhm.
And I spent most of my life not remembering her, not surrounding myself with pictures, being grateful that now I'm not so grateful that no one ever asked me about my mom. In fact,
Mhm.
my mentor, Hope Edelman, who wrote the book Motherless Daughters, at
Mhm.
her retreat, women get a t-shirt that says, "Ask me about mom," because no one does, and I realized right away nobody wanted to talk to the girl who had a dead mom because nobody did, so it was a really long haul of not actually doing that and writing the memoir, which I have a full draft of. It's not published
Mhm.
yet because I keep editing it. I've always said I could edit till I come home and never can. And I'll not finish that. No, I will finish the memoir, but the experience of writing the memoir, I think, was the key to me understanding how important it is to really lay out there. And it was, as Laurel Richardson often says, writing is a form of inquiry, writing is a way of
Mhm.
finding out. And so writing the memoir only came about because when my daughter turned 7 and 8, the ages I was when my mom was diagnosed, boom,
Mhm.
started flying at right and left. Then she's 9 and I was 9. She's 10 and I was 10, all the way
Mhm.
up until, when she was 17, I could
Mhm.
see, oh my God, she's a little girl. She's 17, but she's so precious and so vulnerable and so not grown up. And
Mhm.
I never realized that until that. So I think that's really key to me, understanding how important it is not to push those sadnesses, those traumas away, to bring them up, write about them. I've learned so much. I've learned so much about myself. I've learned about my mom. I mean, seeing her in a way that I didn't before. I've learned so much of my daughter. I think I'm a better, like a phenomenal nana because I looked at all these other things, and so you begin to see the gifts that come and keep on giving when you're
Mhm.
willing to really poke at that and see what it is and try to understand it. So I think that's where it all started. And then I wrote about my dad's death, which was a hospital accident. They sent him home with a level of pneumonia by accident. And I wrote a story about that and ended up getting that published too. And that helped me to see I wasn't as guilty as I thought I was. I mean, because that's what you have when you're anytime you lose someone, there's so much guilt mixed up with the sorrow, and you kind of have to sort that out a little bit. So I'd
Mhm.
say that was a part of it. There's so many emotions around that darkness, that sadness, that trauma, that when you start to parse it out and in your writing, you start to
Mhm.
see it in a clarity that you can't have when it's all meshed together in one big, ugly, difficult ball that you've put in a corner and said, don't come out, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great answer. Great answer. You're gonna get me emotional. You know, I'm just thinking this as you're talking, your role as a person making sense of their own experiences, as a scholar exploring the role of narrated sense making in parsing these difficult experiences, but also as a mentor and teacher. I think, it strikes me that you are, as Carolyn said at the beginning, such a joyful human. You want to go dance at the sock hop, right? Like you are always, like we're going out and grabbing a glass of wine, we're laughing. You're so much fun to be around. And yet, if anyone knows you, they know that you've gone through so many layers of painful things because you're so open about it. And I think that's so powerful for students when you're meeting them as master's students. They're still like, I was like 23 or something, right? And for me to be able to see that you can go through really difficult, painful things and be a joyful person and have both of that, I think is such a wonderful attribute of a teacher and a mentor. And I really appreciate that about you and your work. Yeah.
And I think, Sarah, part of that is, and I know this to be true, is my first death was, between 7 and 8 when my brother was killed in a car wreck, and being at his casket. I mean, not many people see someone they love, and he looks so much like my dad, my brother. And so I think over time, and I lost my best friend Sylvia in grad school, hit by a car. I mean, the list is way long. It's way, way too long. But I think what it does for you, the only thing that I can say is the gift is really in appreciating life, that you're alive and you're well and you're living way beyond the ages of some of the people you've loved that have passed. I just feel so, so grateful. I mean, every day. I feel that. I feel very grateful. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah. You told us about the autoethnography that you've been working on, the memoir that you've been working on for quite a while. In fact, I remember distinctly that you read a snippet of your memoir. It must have been 2012 or 2013 in that ethnography class. And I was like, whoa, she's sharing this piece of writing with us. And I've gotten to see you share little pieces since then, which has been really cool for me to follow that journey. So I actually want to ask about, how do you share your process? This, like, I'm working on a thing, it's not yet done, I'm still working, I'm still tinkering. What's that role of sharing that process with students and collaborators?
Well, it's kind of embarrassing because it's been almost 20 years. And so I have students that are like, oh, you're still working on that? So it's a little embarrassing, but I think part of it is it keeps changing. I've taken intensive memoir classes, and I'm not sure I would distinguish between memoir and autoethnography too much. I mean, if we want to pin things down, which I really don't want to do, but there are differences, but there are some great similarities too. And I've learned that where I start the story has a big impact on where it goes from there, even though within the overall book, the stories are similar. They're not going to change. The stories are the stories. I might get a little more detail as I remember more detail, but I think it's helping people to understand that there's no one right beginning, but that beginning does influence the trajectory of that story and what becomes the heart of the story. And that's really what I've been trying to figure out. I took a California memoir 2-week class up in San Jose. I think it was like 2006. And that's when I wrote the very first story of the memoir of the day my mom died. And man, that was a tough one to write, but that was really the beginning. And then I took a memoir intensive at Taos, the writing conference. I took a memoir intensive with Hope Edelman at the University of Iowa. And these intensives are great because you only have like 5 people in the class, and they all bring a completed manuscript, and you work with that. And so in some ways, I think I feel grateful that I didn't publish it sooner, because what's happened with McKenna and being a grandmother isn't necessarily going to go into the book, but it sure has shaped some of the things that I've been thinking about a lot more. And I feel like my writing has gotten better. I look back at some of the early stories I wrote, and I'm like, that's kind of not so good. So I'm actually, I guess it's kind of my life project. And
Yes.
I will publish it before I die, but it might be, the day before. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that that's actually one of the things that's really cool as a former student who becomes a collaborator. As a student, you often think your professor knows how to do the thing, capital T. And then you become a collaborator and you get to realize, oh, my professor's also grappling with how to do the thing,
Yeah,
small t, 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 t,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It's
And you
true.
get to be like part of that process of like co-grappling with how you punctuate
Yeah,
experience. Where
yeah,
is the beginning? What
yeah,
is the next step? Is there an end? What happens if you shift where you punctuate life?
yeah.
And I think that's where the most interesting works gets done in that grappling.
I agree.
But as a student, you just think it's this memoir emerges fully formed because my professor knows how to do the thing.
Yeah,
And so that's like something I think I really value about being your student and mentee is being okay with grappling,
yeah, yeah,
being okay with being uncertain about what the direction of this is going to be, but like sticking with it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And just the joy of it as those shifts occur and as you discover things as you're writing. To me, I mean, I have never yeah, writing can be a struggle, but it's so joyful. I mean, I think that's what I would tell anyone starting out as an autoethnographer or, wanting to get involved in that way is the discoveries are nonstop and there's joy in that, even when those are painful. There's joy in being able to discover what is and what is not really part of the story that you might have already always thought was. And then as you write, you go, man, I'm hanging on to some stuff here that doesn't really blend here, that doesn't really fit with what I understand. So I think that's the thing that I would say is I totally find writing in the autoethnographic voice and helping people to write in the autoethnographic voice is the joy of it, discovery.
Yeah. Yeah. The joy of discovery. Yeah. And I don't know, there's just like this feeling when suddenly it's like I can just see a story like crystallizing in front of me.
Yeah.
And it just hadn't been working and felt itchy.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it feels like, ooh, that feels good, right? That
Yeah.
sense of discovery is what keeps me going in this kind of
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we did want to like end with a question, and I wonder we might spend like have a little bit of time at the end to see if anyone wants to ask you a
Yeah,
question.
that would be great. I would love
Yeah.
that.
So I think this will be the last one from me then. So you're officially retired. You have been, although it's hard to tell. You talked to us about like you are still really involved in a community of scholarship. So can you tell us a little bit more about, how do you stay engaged as a professor emerita, and why is that so important to you?
Well, you know, I tell people what I'm doing, and they're like, "You're retired. Like, what are you doing?" I'm like,
Go
"I
take a nap.
I need a new word for it. I'm evolved. I'm evolving. I'm not retiring. I'm evolving." I think that I really don't know how to say this exactly, but I think as an academic, you are so conditioned to be involved in your writing, in your thinking, in your mentoring. It's just who you become, and that's who you are. That's your identity. So for me, retiring isn't about saying, "Oh, I'm cutting off that hue. That's who I am. That's what I do, and that's what I love." Now, I will say I haven't missed grading papers for one single minute. Those big stacks of papers that I would spend so many hours on, I don't miss that. But I do love having my time now. So I work every day at my computer. And I know some people who are retired think that's absolutely ridiculous, but it's not for me. It's so perfect. I love having my first cup of coffee sitting out on the deck. There's no rush to get ready. I mean, I can stay in my pajamas if I want all day, but I always sit down at my computer and I'm writing. I'm writing either on the memoir or on my leadership book. I'm so excited. I'm editing. Sometimes people send me things that they've written and ask for my advice. I don't see that as grading. I see that as fun. I just participated last week in the Student Research Symposium at San Diego State, where I was a judge and was able to offer feedback to students, undergrads and grads. And I love being involved in that way. And it feeds my soul. It feeds my soul to write, to think, to share my writing, to collaborate with other people still. I totally enjoy that. And yeah, I'm retired into exactly how I want to spend my time. I have 2 afternoons a week when I'm with my granddaughter, and it's just pure joy to be with her. And she's I got to write something about her. I know as soon as I finish this leadership book, maybe she will end up in one of the last chapters of the memoir. Who knows?
At least an epilogue, maybe.
Yeah, maybe an epilogue. Yeah. So yeah, I'm living my best life. I mean, I truly am, and still coming to IANI, and I still go to OSCLG, the Organization for the Study of Communication, Language, and Gender. Still interested in gender. So those 2 conferences feed my soul in such a big way. So I think to be your best retired self is to feel soulful. And that's what I feel about my life. I really do.
Well, I think we go to 50, so we have a few minutes left if anyone wants to lob a question for Patricia into the chat. You can unmute there, yeah.
Hey, Patricia, how you doing?
Hi, Chris.
You didn't retire, you just quit your day job and did the best and kept the best part going, right? That's what I keep. This is what has had me hesitating at that moment of should I retire, is will I be able to, but here's what I wanted to say to everybody. You got to go to IANI if you just want to get every other year aerobic exercise. Just watching Patricia at karaoke is exercise. And I noticed this first when she was a femnog with the ethnogs that Andrew invoked at the end of the last session, that she's the most energetic human I've ever seen anywhere, and that includes my 2 kids when they were little kids. So I so I appreciate and your buoyancy and your joy, and I've always loved being associated with you. So I just wanted to say I was here to honor you, and I'm happy that ISAN and IANI saw fit to pick you for this. So
thank you,
cool.
Chris. Thank you so much.
Yeah, anyone else have a question? I'm looking at the chat too, if you want to throw it in, or Keith, you want to unmute?
Absolutely great session. Congratulations, friend.
Thank you, Keith.
Yeah, and Chris isn't kidding about the karaoke. Throw a Tina Turner song on, and Carolyn and Patricia and others are going. I was originally going to ask about emotion, because emotion, to see you perform at International Congress over those years, at NCA, and our time in the division, you can't leave a session where you presented and not feel something. Like you capture an audience. But I feel like that kind of was answered already, and I kind of think we could tie it into the gender stereotypes that you were receiving. You responded to those by doubling down, which is lovely. So this is a different, more particular question. So like I said, when you present, it always has felt like you show up. You show up. What is your practice like?
You mean
You're
in
able to speak to
preparing?
that? Yeah, preparing and
for
right before. So the script, the prose is written, right? And you're doing run-throughs. What's that like for you beforehand?
I used to try to do it so that I didn't have tears. And then at one point, Carolyn said to me, you don't ever have to apologize for tears, because they represent the core of what you're really talking about. I don't know if you remember telling me that, Carolyn, but it has been a profound statement for me, because I was always feeling embarrassed and shameful that tears would come to my eyes. So one of the things I was trying to do for the longest time is practice out that particular emotion. And then, you know, so many years ago when I had that conversation with Carolyn, it really made me feel like, hey, if it happens, it happens. I don't want to fall into a blubbery pool over what I'm talking about. But I do want to know it well enough, because I tend to read my writing. I tend to read my prose. But I've practiced it and really, really practiced it enough. I haven't memorized it. I don't believe in memorization. I know some people do, but for me, I stay with the text because some of you may know I can get off topic very easily. And all of a sudden, my 15-minute time slot is done, and I've only had halfway through my presentation. So I stick with prose. I practice it a lot. I talk with my husband a lot. He always hears my presentations before I come to a conference. And what's really great about that is he'll say, "Oh, I don't quite understand what you're saying here," or there's something more here. I know there's more to this. So he's really good about being a really good listener and being the kind of audience that I hope I'm appealing to when I go to a presentation. And I always try to buy a new outfit because there's something about wearing something new and not that same old shirt, that I've got something new that I'm wearing. And yeah, those are my two big strategies, 2 or 3.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I've always wondered.
Thank you, Keith.
I think we have time probably for one more question. I see Art Brockner in the chat. Congratulations, Patricia. My question is, why do you think autoethnography is so threatening and terrifying in the field of communication? When Carolyn and I retired, we were replaced by empiricists. I've heard so many people at this conference talk about not having mentors or even courses to take. What did we miss when we were near the end of our active departmental lives about how our colleagues felt about our work?
It's the most fabulous question. In fact, I remember, I know you have known in the past Brent Burleson, the die-hard quantitative researcher, and he was on my dissertation committee, and he pulled me aside one time and said, way before this happened in your experience, I don't understand it. I don't get it. What is the draw here? Why are you doing this? And I tried my best to explain, but and Art, you probably understand this better than anyone else, having evolved into the beautiful life of thinking and research that you evolved into. But I saw my colleagues at the University of Hawaii, which is why I left University of Hawaii, because they all were quantitative. And they're good people, but they don't get it. And I think there's something about, and this is happening in leadership too, why my book is so important, our book is so important, is there's this sense of safety and knowingness and security at following a set path with a set of statistics with a particular format. I mean, if you look at the format for a quantitative article, they're all the same. They're all exactly the same. There's this sense of security and knowingness and confidence and ego that goes into that. And I think anybody who is willing to step outside of that probably runs right back. Because guess what? They have to start facing certain emotions about life, about mentoring other people, about all these dark holes. I'm sorry. And I'm not saying autoethnography is a dark hole, although it sometimes can be. I think it's more of that unwillingness to really, as Sarah said, poke at something that you've always been afraid of. And so autoethnographers represent this great fear of an unknown that you don't want. It's a twilight zone. It's stepping into the twilight zone. And I know that's not a very good answer, Art, but I really have seen this over and over again. Luckily, I came from Purdue, where they honored all methodologies and made fun of Michigan State for only being quantitative. Now, I don't know if that's changed, but that was something that was like, why would you limit yourself in that way? So I'm thankful that that's where I came from. And that sort of set the stage, and why I ran from being the token qualitative researcher at the University of Hartford, and why I ran from being the token qualitative ethnographic researcher at the University of Hawaii. And I'm sorry to be saying those names, but the bottom line is everybody at those places know I became a token. They didn't want to get rid of me. They just wanted it to stay in this one little spot over here. So I don't know if that answers it for you, Art, but it's all I can come up with in this. But we can dialogue about it further the next time we're together.
Great. Well, I think we're at time, but thank you, or all of you who logged in to honor Patricia. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I did. So thank you for including me, Carolyn, and inviting me to honor Patricia. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions.
And thank you, everyone, for coming. I really, really, it honors me. Thank you, Art, Carolyn, Keith, Tony, and Sarah. Hi, Laurel. Thank you so much.
It was a wonderful, wonderful session. Thank you both. It was just lovely to watch you interact and to hear your stories. And Patricia, I identify with your retirement story for sure. So
Thank you all. Thank you so much.